4, 3, 2.
For everything from questions about cucumbers to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, call in with your questions about gardening, growing your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Call them anytime at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we are glad that you are with us. I am Stan, of course, the dad, and you are.
And of course, I am James DeFreitas, the son, and we are here each and every week. And we are here for your gardening questions, and we also talk a little bit about real estate. And one of the things I always like to tell people, if you do have a gardening question, you can always peruse the World Wide Web. You can go to Stan's website at www.askmrgreenthumb.com, and you can go to the upper left corner and you'll see where it says ask a question. You can click on that box and you can ask a question about your garden. And the cool thing is you can do it right from your mobile device. So the neat thing is if you're taking a picture, you're in the backyard and you see something you don't recognize. I don't care if it's a bug or something that doesn't look right on your tree. You can send it right to us, and the price is rather nice. It's free, F-R-E-E, and we usually get back to people in 24 to 48 hours. And so, it's just a nice service that we provide, and it's also a nice launching point where we can talk to people and have that engagement.
But if you'd like to send a check to Stan DeFreitas, it's Good Time Memorial Fund, and you're keeping me off the streets by sending that money. We'd like that. That's S-T-A-N.
All right, Sally Struthers.
D-E-F-R-E-I-T-A-S. Make that check out to me, and James may get to see just a tad of it.
I
but
doubt
we're
it.
here.
I sincerely doubt it.
All right, well, that's probably true. But we're here to answer your questions. We are fortunate. We have one of my old friends, Craig Chandler, who is Dr. Chandler, who's been a friend of mine, and I'll let James introduce him in just a second.
I did my homework today, so I wanted to make sure that we did a proper introduction for you. Actually, Craig Chandler here is actually a graduate of the University of Florida, so go Gators. He got a Master's of Science in Horticultural Sciences. Then he jaunted off to the University of Maryland and got his PhD in Horticultural Sciences, and then went off to become Professor Emeritus at the University of Florida. And so I think that is an amazing thing that you've, all the education that you had in your background. You also, apparently, you've worked for 20 years in the development of new strawberry varieties from the University of Florida's Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. So, again, it sounds tremendous to me, and I couldn't be happier that you're in here and that you can bestow your wisdom upon us.
Well, thanks so much, James. That was a great introduction, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So one of the first questions that I have right out of the gate, when you hear the term, as one does in a given day, strawberry hybridizer, explain to me exactly this complicated term and how do we make it make sense for the masses?
Well, you can kind of think of strawberries having similar genetics to humans. There's so many different types of strawberries. Every strawberry is essentially an individual. Mm-hmm. And so we can hybridize, take the pollen from one strawberry type and put it on the female parts of the flower of another and harvest the seeds from that hybridization and then grow out the seedlings. Each seedling is different. We can select the seedlings that have the characteristics that we're interested in. And
what are those characteristics that we're trying to change?
Well, it's certainly we want to, flavor is important, obviously. Mm-hmm. We want post-harvest shelf life.
Okay.
We want the strawberries to hold up.
So robustness is a feature that we want.
Right.
Okay.
We want a certain size. Strawberries, if they're too small, it's very time-consuming to harvest, so the size of the fruit is important. Mm-hmm. The firmness, how well they ship,
That's a very good point, because one of the things that Stan and I talk about almost all the time is your avocado tree. Mm-hmm. And it has some of the best tasting avocados on the planet, and I forgot the variety.
It's a Brogdon, and it's totally black, mm-hmm. but it's probably a hybrid cross on its own. And we talk about, now you were doing hybridization where you were trying to do it, but in nature's been doing hybridization. Well, we're all hybrids to a degree.
Absolutely.
Humans, dogs, cats, and just like that, we're all different.
But specifically, you were mentioning the fact that you didn't think that they would ship very well.
It's a very thin skin, which I like because, I mean, the ones from California, you know, you need to take a hatchet and you finally get into it. Mine is very thin skinned, and it's kind of a cross. It has a lot of the characteristics of a Mexican variety, which means it's cold hardy, but you know, it also has more size, like the Guatemalan, which are not as cold hardy. So it kind of had the best of both. And it was just a sport that came up in the middle of the Brogden Grove. And they said, aha, and this was back during the time when people didn't have any money. Supposedly, I've heard stories that they would say, you know, today we're having toast and avocado. Tomorrow we're going to have avocado and toast. So, you know, they didn't have a lot. I mean, I'm sure a lot of strawberry growers in the old days could probably relate to that too. Who wants another strawberry for what we have today? And, you know, it wasn't that long ago that the agricultural society, most people lived on a farm. And I worry about that some because now today everything is corporate, you know, how big we can own 1 million acres. And at that point, you know, especially for bread or whatever, you can say, we'll charge you whatever we want. And we hope you that, or if you want to go hungry, that's perfectly okay too. And we go, no, I tend to like that food thing. Now, I'm amazed with strawberries. They're so healthy for people. I mean, we all talk about vitamins and blueberries. I like to eat a lot of blueberries in the morning. So, you know, it's going to keep my new ticker going.
Right.
But I also think the same thing can be said for strawberries. A lot of vitamins, a lot of healthy things that are there. Maybe you can even expound on that.
Right, yeah. Lots of antioxidants in strawberries. They're low in calories, so that's people that are wanting to watch their weight. It's a low-calorie fruit.
Well, I watch my weight until the thing goes beep, 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 beep. Get off of here, get off of here. And then I realized that maybe I should be eating more fruit and salads and stuff as opposed to, you know, what I really want, which is French fries and hamburgers and other stuff. And my heart goes,
Well,
hey,
know,
pal.
Just one thought, you know, that's popped into my brain. And I was on the tennis court the other day, and a friend of mine, and again, I don't know the conventional wisdom out there. Somebody will probably hear this and go, well, that's not true. And that's perfectly fine. I accept that. But a buddy of mine I play tennis with says he starts his day out every day with a smoothie. And I remember reading a book by an MD, Dr. Larry Sears, or I think is his name. And one of the things that he was a proponent of was the idea that, you know, when you make the smoothies, you're breaking up all the fiber that's kind of holding the sugar molecules together inside the fruit. And he's not a real big fan of that because he says then all of a sudden it makes it less healthy when you're doing that. So that's one of the reasons I'm not a big proponent of smoothies. I actually like to actually eat the berries on my cereal or on my oatmeal in the mornings, as opposed to just going for that easy smoothie. And besides, it's pretty loud and obnoxious. I mean, if you have to put earplugs in to make your beverage or food product, it's just not something that I'm going to get there because in my house, we've got 2 dogs, and that would just expound the barking. And I don't need already when they hear the UPS truck go by, I know there's no UPS delivery that I don't need an Amazon person to text me that the package is coming. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people can identify with this. I know when the package is being delivered. So
Before they get there by a block.
that's right. Yeah. They've got it covered. But my point, I guess, of this is that, you know, there may be, you know, something that you would want to say is a con towards making the smoothie, if that in fact is
You're
true.
right. Fiber has got to be important. I mean, and I think too many people today, well, it's easy though. We're in an easy society, and a lot of times, probably better you to have that smoothie if you're running out the door than nothing at all. But you're exactly right with all that sugar. The biggest problem I find with bananas, or most of the fruits, and strawberries are probably better than bananas, is you're getting a ton of sugar. And we have become, I think I'm the same way, a sugarholic. For a long time, I went, oh, I got to have that something in the morning that would get me going, and usually coffee. Right. And usually in the old days was sugar. Now, of course, you put in whatever. I like stevia. And somehow I go, well, maybe that's healthier. Now, 20 years from now, they'll come back and go, oh, no, stevia probably has something too, which is my luck. I mean, I think I put some yellow stuff in here now, and I thought some of the doctors would go,
I like
"Oh,
to
God."
mix it up. I'll do a pink packet one day, a yellow packet the
Color
next
coordinate.
day, and that way I'm just going to get a little bit of cancer. That's all. That's what I'm going for. It's a small amount of cancer.
Well, Craig's wife is an artist, so she would like the palette idea that you're using the colors
There
of
you
different
go.
mixtures.
I do
things.
my part on the corporations of the world who make their money off of sugar. One interesting thing I wanted to point out, too, that's not exactly related to strawberries, but it's pretty interesting because this was made on a Facebook post recently, and I don't know if anybody's seen this, but this is a picture of a great banyan tree. Has anybody seen this particular post? Okay, it's been making it around the Facebook world, I guess, and what I found interesting is this is a picture of a great banyan tree. It's a single tree in India, and it's 3.5 acres in size. It's more than 250 years old and 80 feet tall. And the reason that I mention it, and it's this ties this, I always like to have a circle back to something that relates to the guest, is imagine the amount of carbon dioxide capture this one tree has. Okay, and the reason I mention that is something I know that is near and dear to your heart was a nonprofit that you had started a while back, Trees for Good.
Right. Well, thank you for mentioning that, James.
Yeah.
Yes, trees are a great way to sequester carbon. And so, after I retired, I started this little nonprofit, basically a single person operation where I planted a number of trees in apartment complexes and on school grounds and
Nice.
on some church grounds. And
Well, and that's the thing that and one of the things I wanted to mention too, because I was talking, and I've got some friends, and one or two, that's all I can handle. But I've got some friends of mine, and they're very, environmentally friendly. At least that was their goal. And then I share that sentiment. The thing that I'm finding a little disappointing is that people are telling me about how they're going to cut down their trees so that they can put solar panels up. And I'm trying to, I understand that we want solar, and I'm for solar, so don't get me wrong, but I don't necessarily know if I want to cut my trees down all around my property so that I can have solar panels up, and I'm not sure that's the best trend. It seems to me maybe we need to have a more balanced approach on that. And I mean, what's your thoughts on I mean, and I don't want to be too political, but at the same token, is there a way to do this in a responsible way?
Sure, I think, a lot depends on what type of tree it is. If you've got a native tree, say an oak tree that's large and maybe, 50, 100 years old, that would be certainly a shame to cut that down. And it's also a habitat for so many birds and insects. And so, yes, I think you have to look at the individual situation.
That makes perfect sense. And we'll continue talking about that kind of topic when we come back. So don't change the dial or click away or whatever it is that you're doing to listen to us.
Stay with us as the plant talk and real estate talk continues here right on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 727-546-8786, on the web at StaffordTreeSVC.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's Plantz, is bringing nature inside, in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we are with Dr. Craig Chandler, and he had a nonprofit, Trees for Good. And if the IRS is listening, all those deductions are legitimate because he is mentioning it today. We're covering for you, buddy. We'll come in there, and it's true. But I mean, I think Craig has this good heart. I'm always amazed too. I read these articles about we're going to put up these big screen things to purify the air, and we have to wash them with all these solvents and do all these things. And I thought, God created a great, air cleaner, and it's called a tree. And one of the things I will give FDR did that I thought was great is we had all these people out of work, and they had them plant millions and millions of trees. People had pride because they helped plant the tree. And a lot of those trees today, and a lot of those buildings and schools too with the WPA are still standing, still work, and they were great. In fact, some of the craftsmanship they did back then is better than what I see today. And they just go, well, the school lasted 5 years. I mean, our old junior high at Riviera is gone because it's obsolete. And we were like the first class.
Right.
And we're not that old. I mean, well, kind of, but we're still on the younger side. The old school St. Pete High, where my grandmother was a music teacher, is still there, and it was put in 1920. So I think it's amazing. That old brick school is still standing. Our old junior high is level gone, and it's obsolete.
Absolutely. So I had some more questions about strawberries. Okay. So when you're changing these stuff, now, again, I imagine that this question may have come up once or twice in your past, especially if you're giving talks about this. Is there a movement where people would go, oh, what you're doing is out of touch with nature and therefore isn't something we should be doing? Does anybody ever say anything to you in that? Because I think there's a science gap between wanting to be good stewards to the environment and then are we artificially changing things to be better in a way that we're uncertain of the outcome? Do you ever get that sort of thought that's brought to you?
I haven't gotten that exact question, but certainly many people will say, well, strawberries today don't taste as good as those small little strawberries I picked as a kid. Okay. And, I think we all have fond memories of our childhood, and certainly if we pick a fresh strawberry, and it's true that once you put the strawberry in the refrigerator, which you should do to keep it for any length of time, that it's probably not going to be as tasty as one that you would pick right out of the field.
And I noticed that with tomatoes too. If I get some tomatoes, even if they're tomatoes I've grown, if I put it in the refrigerator, it doesn't taste as good as if I had just eaten it that day.
Right.
And so somehow we're having a problem with. I mean, we want to keep it fresh so that it looks nicer, but we're doing that at the sacrifice of how it tastes. Is what way I've experienced it. But I guess that's the thought process that I think in some, what you're doing is you're actually changing some of the characteristics of this fruit so that it can actually be is it more of a more commercially viable product at the end of the day? And is that our goal, or are we changing the characteristics for other reasons?
Well, decades ago, you basically had strawberries maybe a few weeks out of the year, when they were available. But now we have strawberries 12 months out of the year because we can grow them in one location, say Florida or California, and ship those for long distances. So we can ship them to the northern U.S. where in the old days they wouldn't have had fresh strawberries, but now they can.
Now they can have them.
They can have them. So it is allowing people to have fresh fruit year round, which
sure, and that can't be a bad thing,
right?
As
far as your health goes,
we're feeding the people. I mean, they're getting the fruits. I remember when I was a kid, oranges were a big thing. I mean, you'd get an orange in your stocking or something. You're going, hey, where's the toy? Where's the money?
Right.
It's a lot of fruit. Now today, with the price of fruit, maybe you are getting a better deal by getting that fruit or an egg. I see. You see, guys out there, if you want to give your Valentine something special, get that little diamond carton and put an egg in it, and she'll know you really care.
Well, now they're talking about the cost of an egg that they might be having to do potatoes this year because I mean, if you haven't seen the cost of eggs, I mean, it was like we buy, and again, I don't know that they're better, but now I've been trained. My wife thinks that Eggland's Best is better, so we buy those eggs. And I looked at the carton last time, and I think it was $9.08 for a carton of eggs, and that does seem like we're going in the wrong trajectory. But if I bring home the other ones, she'll protest. She won't eat it. So then I have egg on
They
my
might be a
face.
little, might be a little more healthy to have the ones that have more nutrients in them, but I think some of that's sales gimmick too.
And again, I think most people would be willing to pay more if the chickens or the livestock has a healthier environment, if they're not being stuck in a cage all day and they get to free roam. I think a lot of people are, and I am too, because we've all seen those commercials on TV, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, am I contributing to that?" And I hope not. Right. At least I hope I'm not. But it's not like, and that's another issue too. While we're on it, why is there not more investigative reporting being done so that we can see the things that we're not supposed to see? It seemed like we used to do that a lot more in the 80s and 90s, and now we're not doing that kind of stuff.
Because they've cut half their staff. You don't see people out doing roving reporting stories anymore.
Well, no, they seem to be fully engaged in making two sides of people that see the world differently hate each other. They seem to be very effective at doing that. But one of the things that I think is a great uniting force is a love of trees. And that's one of the things that I think could actually bring people back to the center, which is, I don't care if you're on the left or the right, we have all different kinds of customers that we go out to when we do these tree injections. And people, it doesn't even come up. The first thing that we notice is that they have a genuine care for their tree in their yard, and they want to make sure that they can keep the tree. And again, it's kind of sad, but I see it, I've got 1,000 Facebook friends, and I can't go more than a week without somebody putting online a picture of a crane that's coming out where somebody is removing this massive oak tree in their yard. And I always point out, I'm like, well, was it truly something that needed to be cut down? Do you have pictures of it before it's a stump? I'd love to have seen it before you made that decision. But I'm always interested. People are absolutely determined so that, to go ahead and do this really expensive tree cut down with stump grinding removal, but the idea of getting a little bit more knowledge about their tree and maybe, taking some preventative action seems to be an afterthought. And I really think it boils down to just being an education issue. I think
we looked at a tree yesterday. We went out to look at a palm, and the guy was real worried about his palm. And I got out there in this beautiful little neighborhood in Northeast St. Pete, and I looked at his trees, and I said, well, they're beautiful live oaks. And the guy said, well, I even had my workers, specifically work around these trees. They all complained because they wanted to cut them. It was harder to build, and I could see why it would be hard to build. But saving his trees, I said, you've got borers in those trees. And he said, borers? Well, what are they? I said, well, not John, Paul, Ringo, and the boys without Epi, we can't do rock and roll like we used to. I said, no, not those beetles. And I said, we need to worry about those little tiny beetles get in there and the bark starts sloughing off. They get in, and I said, and once they emit hormones, it's like, eat at Craig's. All of a sudden, they're going to be coming in. The borers are doing what they're supposed to do, and that is ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Right. Unfortunately, if it's hanging over your house, you might be in for a rude hurricane awakening. So that's the reason we're telling people, check your trees. This guy had no idea that something was going on.
Correct. And thank God he did call us, because we were able to identify the actual problem that he had. We are talking to Dr. Craig Chandler, and we will continue with his expert wisdom when we come back from the break. Don't click away with your mouse, and don't change that dial if you're listening to us on the radio.
AM 860, The Answer, right here. Make sure you stay with us.
Want to talk real estate? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online, aflre.com. Broken air conditioner? Keep your home's AC running smoothly all year long with Easy Breezy AC. With thousands of active commercial and residential customers, Easy Breezy AC is Tampa Bay's most trusted HVAC company. Easy Breezy AC cares about those in need. Donate 2 cans of food and receive $20 off a $79 service call. Go to easybreezyac.com and use promo code Greenthumb for an additional $10 off your service call. Call 727-856-HVAC. Life's hard. Comfort's not. Did you know that Stan DeFrida's Mr. Green Thumb can come to your house and examine your plants, trees, and palms? His knowledge can help you become the envy of your neighborhood with lush, green, healthy trees that don't just live, but thrive. Palms and oak trees are part of what makes Florida a beautiful place to live, but they get diseases and are often cut down. We offer ways to save your trees. Call or text Stan today at 727-423-4794 or go online to AskMrGreenThumb.com. That's ASKMR Greenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at AskMrGreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFridas.
And we're so fortunate to have my old friend, Dr. Craig Chandler. I said, Craig and I have been friends for 58 years. I was counting that up the other day, and I thought, that's you and Jeff Herr are two of my oldest friends. I talked to Jeff today. He said to say hi to you. And I told him the other day, we had lunch and with Linda and Peg, and he was happy for us. And remember, we were gonna have a rock band called the Nomads, because I could play C and G and E on the guitar, and we thought, we'd like be the next Liverpoolians. And Craig was pretty good on the organ and piano, and Jeff could play bass guitar and other stuff. Actually, played better than I could. But we thought we were going to reinvent the wheel because we saw all the girlies like the rock and roll band, so we thought we were going to do that. We didn't. I see. Craig was one of my friends. Craig could wear this stuff. He slicked his hair back, and it looked really good on Craig. I looked at it and I went, it doesn't look good on me.
So you weren't a Dapper Dan man?
I wasn't a Dapper. Craig could be a Dapper Dan man, and it looked good on Craig. And I was always jealous as a kid because I thought, he puts his stuff in and it looks good on him. I put the stuff on there and I go,
Actually, that's probably not what you guys had. What was it? Not Dapper Dan. You guys probably had Dippity Doo.
That was Dippity Doo. Yeah, that was one of the things.
Dippity Doo. For those out there in the know, you know.
Yeah, but it was a different time.
I remember looking at some newspaper clippings of that product, and that's why, even though it's not something I ever purchased because it's not in part of my generation, it is something I'm aware of as a product that was out there.
Well, we met North Shore School. I know, was it Harriet Strum or
Mrs. that was their one and only year of teaching.
She was a great lady, actually kind of an astronomer type. She did it 1 year, and I think it was a lot of teachers can probably relate to that. 1 year was enough. But actually, I enjoyed teaching. I taught for 15 years at a technical college and a St. Petersburg college in an evening program stuff. And of course, after a while, my wife was saying, that's your dad going in and out the door, because I was working 40 hours a week as an extension horticulturist for IFAS. And then I would go teach 3 nights or 4 nights a week, and I was teaching 3 hours a class. And I love teaching, but after a while, I thought, she's right. I'm not being a dad, and James wanted to do stuff, father-son stuff, so I gave up teaching, even though I thought I was good at it because I enjoyed people.
Sure, and thank goodness for Ralph Macchio in The Karate Kid, because that was a movie I watched on repeat over and over and over and over again, and then you finally said, well, I found this dojo we could go to, and it's not exactly like Pat Morita when we go in there, but it's close. We're going to get a little Mr. Miyagi treatment. And,
I know something.
Yeah. And
we learned it's Nisanshi Goroku Tachuju, which is 1 through 10 in Japanese.
And I learned rather quickly that it was a lot of work. They wanted you to work out and stuff, and you had to take and then the other thing too is that when you're a kid in a karate class, you get beat up a lot by girls. And
humbling.
Yeah. So you I don't know if that was an ego booster or an ego, but it was a good preparation for later in life, because that still continues. But needless to say, no, it was a good experience that we got to do that together. One of many, including, it was funny, it was probably 10 years ago now. I had invited a bunch of my friends because you guys, either because you really liked me or you didn't really like me, they got me a skydiving pass over at the Skydive City in Zephyr Hills. And I invited all my friends, and none of them showed.
But they all bailed on him.
Yeah, and I said, Dad, now this is, of course, pre-back surgery, no ailments, you were in perfect health. He got in a perfectly good airplane with me, and we both took the jump.
Yep.
So
That was fun.
Yeah. So
We've done 40-foot dives. We became certified divers.
Yep.
We did tennis. We won some tournament things together.
yeah.
And playing usually the doggy tournament or whatever the cancer tournament. And so that was fun. And we did karate. I got to black belt. I want to show an old dude could get my 2nd degree black belt, which I was a knee on. And I actually purposely stayed behind in class so I could be in the same class with James. So they said, "Oh, you could step up to the next class quicker." I said, "No, I'm here to be with my son. I don't care if I make black belt in 6 months or a year. I'd rather we're doing something together."
Right.
And so I said, I just wanted to show him that an old dude, and I had a stretch that was horrible. I mean, it looked like a big bridge. But I did learn things. I was pretty good. I thought, well, I can give as good as I get, and I can.
Well, the main aspect of it I thought was beneficial and something that is very teachable and applicable today was making sure that, yes, you have the skills to defend yourself, but it's for defense and to avoid a fight if you can, and some of the instructors were very good on the comment of run jitsu, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with turning the other cheek and going in the opposite direction. And
Sure.
You don't always have to, you may be right, but you might be legally wrong. And it's better to just not have the problem and walk away. And almost every situation where emotion overrides your judgment, you've already made a mistake. So there's the PSA announcement of the day. Do not let emotion dictate your choices. Take the time.
I think too, I liked the karate thing was good because you thank your teacher to begin with. You thank your teacher in the end.
Right.
I'm not so sure we shouldn't incorporate that into American education as well, that you thank the teacher. The teacher is not your enemy. You don't have a right to pull out a gun and shoot your teacher because she gives you a C when you deserve the C. So
when you earned the C.
So yes. So I think some of those type of things that the Orient does, they do well. They've been doing it for 10,000 years.
Right.
And you might learn something from other cultures. And I thought we learned that. I really did enjoy that. That you were always very respectful and thanking the teacher. And even your wife teaches art. I think art in general, of course, you're bringing out something magical in the person. And I think any education should be that magical process of learning something and trying to get that young mind going, or even old mind. A lot of my students when I taught at the Azalea Center were all seniors. And then the worst habit I had, and most of them were in their 80s, that they had a bad habit of dying on me, and I loved them, but they came up and hugged me and stuff. And James would say, "Why are you doing that? There's no money in going down there to teach these seniors." And I said, "Well, they hug me and they love me and we share cookies and coffee and we cut up plants." I said, "You'll see later in life, Circle of Life says that we need to do some of that to pay back for people who did that for us."
Well, when you're 16 or 17 years old, you're wondering why the world doesn't revolve around you. And, I get it now because, now I spend more time with my elderly neighbors than actually I think my wife is comfortable with. But, a lot of them, they have all these kids and they and again, I guess I just assume this, but I think it's a big misnomer that, well, I had all these kids. They said they'd come visit, and then they don't come visit. And I'm like, so I've come over more than your kids have come over? Well, you're like my adopted kid now because you come over and wonder how I'm doing. And I do. And I have a neighbor who she's 70. She's just turned 74. And she doesn't really have anybody. And so I go over, check on her, and I make sure she's doing okay. And she was having a problem getting her clicker. She calls it the clicker. It's the TV remote. And I said, okay, well,
That's an old folks technical term.
She calls it the clicker. And her batteries were bad, so we took them out, put in new batteries, and then all of a sudden she was happy because she could watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune again and all these other things that she really likes doing.
She could see Judge Wapner.
That's right.
In 5 minutes, fight Judge Wapner.
I don't think Wapner is still with us.
I was just thinking of that, the movie.
It's Judge Judy now. She's the one that's taken over.
Yeah.
But I kind of liked Wapner's, he was a little kinder, more gentle. Judge Judy seems to be, she's tough and I respect that. But
who's the boss here? Me. Who's the star?
I'm absolutely intimidated to be in front of her. And I would be a stumbling mess. She would say something and I'd be like, I don't even know my name. I literally would be that nervous in front of her. But I guess in some ways you're going to get the truth because if you're already starting from that point, So she's good in that angle. I might mention too, the other part of that we do on this show, of course, is real estate. And one of the things that was mentioned recently on my Facebook page, and again, I absolutely love being positive. Positive is great, but I also think we need to match positive with being truthful. And a lot of real estate agents, a lot of mortgage brokers tend to go down this path of painting a super rosy picture, and I'm okay with being positive, but make sure we interject the truth too, so that we actually set a reasonable expectation for the outcome that people can achieve. And if people are in the real estate business in particular, the numbers are, we're seeing a shift in the market. Certain real estate is just holding tight. I mean, it's not really changing that much. But in other markets, 55 and up communities, those are taking longer to sell, okay? And that's just a fact of the situation. The other thing that is probably most telling from the December stats, which I have in front of me from Stellar MLS, I want to make sure that I mention where I'm getting the stats from, is that from December of 2021, we had 19,846 active listings. If we go to November of 2022, just a year later, just short of a year later, we now have 41,666 active listings. So now we have more than double the amount of listings on the market. And that tells you right off the bat, and you don't have to be a math major either, so you just common sense here. We have more of this. More of this means that we'll be competing more with our neighbors, because that's just the way it is. It's supply and demand economics 101. So I just want to remind people, yes, I think and again, here's the positive takeaway. It's taking longer, but people are actually getting the same amount of money or a little bit more than they were getting last year. So it's positive, but it just means you're going to have to be more patient and set the appropriate expectations with your seller and your buyer ultimately too. Maybe they're going to be in a situation where they put in an offer for a property and they have to wait a week before they just hear from the seller letting them know whether or not they accept that offer. So again, patience usually wins the day. One of the comments that I hear a lot of, and this is something in the business that we hear all the time, they're called love letters. One of the things that takes place is people will actually write a little story about them, and that does sometimes give you an edge. If
Craig
you have
Linda just did a love letter.
Well, and I wasn't specifically going to mention them per se, because I have heard a lot of people doing this, and sometimes it does give you a little bit of an edge. Now, there is some genuine concern out there as to whether or not, the MLS is still debating the issue as to whether or not they want to allow people to continue doing this, and they're worried that maybe people would be steering people. There is a concern that maybe be able to compete.
And that was the biggest problem. I mean, does somebody that's, let's say, white have an advantage over somebody that would be a minority,
right?
Whatever it may be. Right. And that was the biggest worry for the love letter problem.
Right. So far, they're still in the mix, but it is a thought I want to mention out there to people that you do want to pay attention to what seemingly harmless to you might be considered a disadvantage to someone else.
But that's true almost in everything these days. I mean,
and again, it's not to point anything at you, because at the end of the day, you can't help that you're just great people. I mean, that's the story that
And I do think if you see two smiling faces and they look friendly, and you go, oh, well, I can identify with that smiling face. Right. Personally, in a lot of education, well, we can talk more about that if we have another.
Yeah, I think we have one more break, don't we, Brian? Okay.
We'll talk about that, about why I think you shouldn't know anything about people personally. That's for education.
That's right. And you are listening, of course, to us on AM 860, The Answer. Don't click away if you're watching on Facebook, and we will be right back after this break.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 727-546-8786. On the web at StaffordTreeSVC.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's Plantz, is bringing nature inside in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And as you know, on this show, we go off on everything. Everybody thinks we're going to talk about just about lawns, grasses, and stuff, and we do on occasion when those questions come in. But I guess we're frustrated talk show hosts because we like to go off into the tangents.
It's whatever's interesting. And again, if you're just tuning in, of course, I am James DeFreitas, and of course, you were just hearing Stan DeFreitas, my father, the better version of me in terms of knowing plant material. And of course, today we are blessed with Dr. Greg Chandler, and we are so happy you are here with us today. One of the things I wanted to mention real fast, if I can, this is something that I think is a bit of an issue that is taking place right now in St. Petersburg in particular. It's happening in pockets all over the place. But I'm trying to, and again, I think this is mainly an education issue, but maybe you could give us some thoughts here. A lot of people are putting in these beautiful pools in their backyards, and then they're kind of cheating in the backyard. And I'm okay with xeriscaping, and of course, xeriscaping just means to try to garden without using as much water or being more mindful of your water usage.
Zero meaning dry.
Zero meaning dry. But one of the things that I'm seeing on Facebook in particular, on social media feeds, is people are putting in these, and this has happened to me at least 10 times that I've seen this in the last calendar year, where somebody started bragging about this beautiful artificial grass that they put in their backyard. Can you talk a little bit about what you think about that?
The artificial grass.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Linda and I just visited some friends, and they had put some not artificial grass in their backyard, and it was impressive. I mean, it looks great. It looks real, but they didn't have a lot of it, and it was in a shady spot where
you're not going to grow grass.
Where you can't grow grass anyway.
Right.
But they need a little area. They have a couple of dogs, and so yeah, I thought in that sense it worked.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd hate to see just the whole yard covered in artificial turf.
Right, and here's one of the thoughts that comes over my mind is that, again, grass is something that is part of the ecosystem, and some of the issues that I could see at play here is erosion. One of the reasons that all of our ditches have the bahia that looks brown when they put it in, but somehow miraculously comes
the
back.
Resurrection grass, as I call it.
Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, part of the reason that we do that is we're trying to make sure that we have something that holds that soil in play. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very concerned with the idea of artificial turf being placed over it. The other thing that I would think might be an issue, and you can feel free to correct me when I'm wrong, I'll put it that way because I'm sure I will be, but we're not getting any sunlight on that earth underneath. I would imagine the oxygen transport is a lot less since we're now creating a layer over the top. And what does that?
Zero.
Well, that's what that's my concern is that, have we thought about this all the way through, considering the amount of people that are doing this now? Really hard to police what people do in their backyards, mind you, too. Yeah, right. And you could make an ethical debate, too, about, well, my property, my choice. You could make that statement, I guess. But I also, I'm very concerned from, environmental impacts. How much plastic are we using to make this stuff? How much energy are we using to make this stuff? And then what are the long-term effects? I mean, if we were to dig down a couple of feet, do we still have the same microbes that are in the soil? It presents a bunch of questions for me, and I'm trying to get people to think. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly not an expert on turf grass.
I know nothing. So
or the artificial turf. But there's certainly good reasons to have turf grass in your yard. I mean, if you have pets or you have children that you need a place to play. But you have to gauge how much you put out there depending on your needs. But certainly if you don't need all that turf grass and you can put it into a mulched area, and then we have a lot of native plants that grow in the understory. I think, from an environmental standpoint, that's a much better choice.
And Craig had a backyard where he kind of had it mulched, and he had a lot of fruit trees and other things. Of course, you'd expect Craig to have some fruit trees and
A lot of edibles.
Right,
and
yeah,
things,
right.
which I tend to like the idea too. My wife would probably divorce me because I'd have every square foot probably with something to eat out there because I'm worried that the world's we're gonna have this. I'm not really a doomsday prepper, but every time I go to the store, I go, I love my avocados because they're free. And if I have to go buy them at the store, it costs me $2 for an avocado, and it breaks my Scottish heart. It's a brow brick, neck. I ain't spending $2 for an avocado. But anyway, the people in Scotland will love me. Wait till I get to Scotland. I'm going to change them.
I'm a little concerned about that. They may find some challenges with your Scottish accent, but we'll go with it for now.
Hey, I'll be picking up the Irish too, don't you know? I'll be doing that. I know it because if I'm around them any length of time. But anyway, we'll have fun. There's no doubt about that. But Craig, there's a point. You're saving when you have mulch and stuff down. You're not mowing. And of course, the big thing is when we're mowing all these acres, it's all this gas and oil that's being used to burn to mow stuff. Right. And so grass becomes the dominant ground cover.
Right. Except now a friend of mine he cut down a lot of trees to put up his solar panels. So if we can get past him cutting down these trees to put up his solar panels, he took a selfie on his electric riding lawnmower that he powered off of his solar panels.
I can't see the picture. No, there's no picture.
No, there's no picture. I'm just giving like an example of what he did. And so, yes, visually, don't look at me in that regard, but for our radio listeners, it worked perfect. But anyways, thanks for following along. But anyways, he took a picture of himself as a selfie. I'll just do my hand then, sorry, of how green he was being as he was cutting using his solar-powered electric, lawnmower. And so I guess to that point, if they are using that and they're making their own power, then the comment of worrying about the carbon emissions from cutting grass would be somewhat negated, as long as we don't look to see how much carbon was used to make the lawnmower. I mean, I'm just saying you got to look at the total package of what did we spend in order to get this. And I think that's one of the again, I'm not against all electric vehicles. I think that they're very interesting. But once again, that produces a lot of interesting questions.
It does. Well, I've got a car that's like half electric, half gas, and I like it for its gas mileage. I don't like to think about the little children probably in Africa that are mining the raw materials by hand. And I love it. The corporates go, this is all, they write the slogans because good writers will come up with, they'll say, it's all being done ecologically friendly. And then you go watch it with the cameras and you see there are little 7-year-olds pulling these rocks out of the ground, and you're going, maybe not as quite as nice and rosy as we picture.
And that's kind of my whole point is that, I noticed that Elon Musk of Tesla, he put out a thing saying that he had secured a contract with a country in Africa for lithium mining. And then I went and looked up the company, and then they explained how they were extracting the lithium, and then I heard something called chemical leach mining. Now, I'm not great at understanding all of the chemistry behind that, but it sounds kind of bad when I listen to that terminology. And I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes it feels like we're going green, but we don't really see what it takes to go green, and that going green could be worse than being green. And I guess in a lot of ways, I might be in favor of seeing us maximize our fuel economy, if nothing else. I mean, could we maybe push for a 60 miles per gallon car? I mean, I feel like what we're doing is we're trying to jump into a boat, and we're not quite ready yet. I mean, it seems like we're jumping a gap here where we could, I'd like to see more hybrid electric vehicles on the market, and people, but I guess that's not really selling. I mean, I see people, my Tesla will go 0 to 60 in 2.5. I'm like, why do you need to go that fast?
But that's what electric motors do. But
right, yeah, it makes me think of that joke that Mom was saying yesterday about the Ferrari and the old guy. Remember that one?
I think so.
Well, I'll tell it real fast since we got time to kill. But this old guy and this guy has this Ferrari, and I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Guy has this Ferrari, he's bragging about it, $200,000 he paid for this Ferrari, And this old guy is on his scooter and he's going, "Hey, why do you need to go that fast?" And the guy, and he realizes the guy in the scooter he's going really fast. And the next thing you know, the guy punches it on the Ferrari because he wants to leave the guy in the dust. And sure enough, as he's going down the road, he sees the old guy in the scooter still catching up to him. And he goes, "How could that be?" So he punches it again and he goes 200 miles an hour. And then, and the guy in the scooter, sure enough, he's still coming up on the guy. How can that be? So finally he hits the brakes. He looks over, he sees the old guy and he says, "How the heck are you doing that?" And he goes, "When you first took off, you grabbed my suspender with your left mirror."
So he got a free ride. Yes, that's a cute. I love that joke. Speaking of that, let's mention your daughter is in a business where she's coming up with ideas and things. Why don't we give her a little quick plug?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have two beautiful daughters, and they're both artists,
Yes.
like my wife is. They followed in their mother's footsteps to some degree. Julie Almeida is my older daughter, and she is a graphic designer in Tampa, and she's has a little company called Jules Creative, and you can learn more about her at julescreativedesign.com.
Okay.
julescreative.com.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So if you have a little small business and you want somebody, or even a big business, and you want somebody that's going to be hands-on, she can help come up with a campaign.
Yep.
We're just
certainly
about
can.
out of time. So
Absolutely. But we do appreciate having you on the show today. You've been an absolute delight as a guest. And thank you for imparting your wisdom with us. And stay tuned for Dr. Bill Handelman. He'll be coming on after us, especially if you're listening to us on Sundays.
have a great Sunday.
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com.